Hello class, today I'm going to begin by recreating a portrait in the style of one of Van Gogh's very iconic self-portraits. Here you can see the complete image. There's a very complex paint surface, but I am just going to be working from this crop detail that I chose because it's going to be a lot easier for you to see the surface texture that I'm going to create. So I took a selfie, and in it I tried to match the lighting and the angle as best as I could. Now of course there's some pretty strong differences there, but you'll notice that the highlights are roughly in the same place, and the overall angle is quite similar. So some artists begin by doing a fairly highly rendered pencil drawing in a painting. Now I almost never do that. I tend to just start very gesturally in my paintings, but today I am going to begin in pencil, just to review some things about portraiture and take my time a little bit more. So first I'm going to kind of determine the overall placement of my face. Now in the selfie that I took, there's not very much room behind my head. I'm going to include just a little bit more, as you can see in this cropped view. And also the ratio of my support is 9:12. This is actually an 8:10 piece of paper, and the portrait's even a little bit more narrow than that. So I'll be making some adjustments. I'm just going to start though by drawing very lightly. Now you'll notice that my board is not white. It's actually kind of a dull brownish pink. This is actually red oxide mixed with some gesso. It's kind of what I had lying around. Now I don't think that Van Gogh would have necessarily begun his paintings in this way. I'd have to do a little bit of research, but I would assume that he worked from maybe an unbleached linen, or possibly more of like an umber wash. I do not think that he worked from a white ground, and when I look really closely at some of the spacing between the strokes, I see what looks like, you know, kind of like a muted umber, which looks to be the lower layer in this painting. It's kind of hard to tell from a print. This is one reason why artists make museum guards really nervous, because unless you're looking at the actual physical object, it can be a little tough to see what's going on. Says the woman who is trying to show you something digitally. But we'll just have to do our best. Now, when I teach drawing, one of the things that I really focus on is just the importance of taking a look at the subtleties of our contours and negative space. I'm a little bit concerned that my drawing might become just a little bit distorted because I like to draw with my paper or my canvas upright facing me to cut down on distortion. But I'm going to hope that I can just kind of compensate from there. Now, I know you can't really see too much what I'm doing just yet. I begin my drawings very lightly, very gesturally, and I'm really thinking most about overall proportions. One of the mistakes that sometimes people make in drawings, not just in portraits, but in drawings of all different subjects is they become really attracted to details and forget, you know, kind of the overall relationships that we're seeing inside of our work. So I'm noticing there's a few problems. Now I'm just drawing with a mechanical pencil. One of the reasons I like to do that when I'm in a hurry is I don't have to worry about doing any kind of sharpening. And I'm noticing even from my very preliminary sketch here that I think I would like to make this face just a little bit smaller. But luckily, because I've been drawing really lightly, it's so easy for me to make even major adjustments at this stage. And you know what, I think maybe I'll even move the whole head over. Luckily, where I'm beginning my drawing, where it's beginning to build up a little bit more density is on the shadow side, so that's just really easily gonna just merge into the drawing as I go. Okay, so one thing to notice about proportions is from the top of the head to the bottom of the chin, if I were to look at the midway point, it'd be somewhere in the range of the bottom eyelid. Now, of course, if a head is turned downwards or thrown back, if it's foreshortened in any way, those relationships are going to change significantly. So I think it's important not to get too formulaic in the way that we think about proportions, and instead just to stay very responsive to our subject. Okay. Now, one thing that's kind of nice about having mixed some red oxide into my gesso is that it's going to give me a nice base to start to work off of. But because I mixed it with gesso, gesso is drier, chalkier, and it just gives you a better drawing surface than, let's say, some acrylic paint. Now, I mentioned that the head, if I go from the top of the head to the bottom of the chin, I'm going to arrive at the bottom eyelid. And when I look here, from one side of my face to the back of my head, if I were to be looking at in this image where the midpoint is going to be, it's going to be somewhere in the range of my right iris in my eye. So since I've kind of established the width of my head here, that's, you know, somewhere in the range of where I'm going. Now, one of the most common mistakes that people make when they're drawing eyes is they tend to draw them very large. Unfortunately, the things that we're most attracted to tend to kind of expand in size. So I'm just going to be mindful of the way in which I start to describe it. Now, I don't want to get detailed, so I'm not going to stay in this one area too long. But I do want to start to get the sense of like the basic shape of my brow. Can't forget the circles under my eye. Now, if I go straight down from the corner of my eye, I'm just right outside where the edge of my nostril is. So that's going to help me sight that. And then if I continue moving downwards, I'm right on the edge of my lip. But if I go to where my lip tucks under and I go straight up, I'm going to collide with the inside of my eye. Now, there's different ways to think about proportion, but one of the things that I like to do is just in my subject, I like to look at where things are lining up and just kind of take some basic comparative measurements. Now, what I said about from the top of the head to the chin, hitting the bottom eyelid, that is, you know, pretty typical. Another measurement that's pretty typical, if I go from the brow to the bottom of the chin and I find the halfway point between those, I'm going to be arriving at the bottom of my nose. Now this photo was taken just from slightly above, and because it was taken with a cell phone, there is some slight distortion. Honestly, it is not the most flattering picture I've ever seen of myself, so apologies. So this is maybe just proportionately, you know, it might have a little bit of camera distortion, but I'm still gonna go from my brow to the bottom of my chin, find my halfway point, and that's where I'm gonna start to establish where my nostril might be. Now, if I were to go from the halfway point between there and the bottom of my chin, I am going to hit a point in my lower lip. So if I look in between there, so I'm going to shape my lip, my top lip, just above that point. Now, one of the things that I do as I'm shaping a structure in a drawing or in a painting is I have to kind of detach myself a little bit from my subject so that I'm able to look at it purely in terms of form and value. Now I have kind of a prominent lower lip, and cheek is a little bit full through there. I'm just gonna see what I can do to pull this along. I've just got a couple minutes left. When I'm in a hurry, I tend to rely most on hatching just because it is kind of fast. And I don't want to forget about little shadows. Shadows are really what give me my form. And I'm just going to kind of indicate where the shadow on my neck might be. Basic placement of my nose I can relate to my ear. I made sure to pull my hair behind my ear because in the painting that I'm taking a look at, Van Gogh's ear is featured prominently, and since it is Van Gogh, that takes on a little extra significance. Plus, ears are challenging to paint, so why not challenge myself a little bit? And that's gonna be a start. So next I'm gonna work this up in some paint. Thanks guys.